Lap 115 at Talladega Superspeedway, and Bubba Wallace is out front leading the pack. Behind him, Ross Chastain is locked onto Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano in a push chain moving at nearly 200 miles per hour. In the next 3 seconds, 26 NASCAR Cup Series cars would be reduced to twisted metal. Not because of one mistake, not because of one bad driver, but because of a chain reaction so fast that most of the field never even saw it coming. Before the race weekend had even started, the anxiety surrounding Talladega was already thick in the air. Jimmy Johnson, a 7-time Cup Series champion, showed up at the track not as a driver, but as a visitor. He stood on the infield, watched the cars circulate, and openly admitted that the place gave him genuine anxiety. He said that at most races you can control your own destiny, but at Talladega anything can happen, and he was lucky to be watching from the outside. He was not wrong. Talladega Superspeedway is not a normal racetrack by any measure. At 2.66 miles long, it is the largest oval in all of NASCAR, and cars race in extraordinarily tight packs with sometimes 40 cars within just a few feet of each other, all moving at speeds that leave virtually zero margin for error. One car going sideways does not just wreck that single car. It wipes out everyone around it. That is the nature of superspeedway pack racing, and it is exactly why Talladega produces the kind of chaos that no other track on the entire NASCAR calendar can match. Stage 1 of the Yellowwood 500 was, by superspeedway standards, almost quiet. NASCAR had flipped the stage lengths heading into this race, a deliberate move designed to prevent fuel-saving strategies from dominating the early portions of the event. It did not fully work. Teams still backed off the throttle to preserve fuel throughout Stage 1, keeping the intensity artificially low, and Ryan Preece won that stage in a clean and largely uneventful fashion. But Kyle Larson, the 2-time defending Cup Series champion, spotted the danger that was quietly building beneath the surface. He noted that the fuel saving was more aggressive than he had anticipated, and that the intensity during Stage 2 would be something else entirely. He understood that you cannot unlearn what you have already learned during Stage 1, and he was right. The fuel-saving habits carried over from the first stage created a dangerous pace mismatch going into Stage 2, where some cars were suddenly running flat out while others were still managing their fuel loads. That gap in speeds inside a pack of 40 cars doing 200 miles per hour is, by any reasonable assessment, a recipe for disaster. Bubba Wallace made a bold and genuinely clever strategic call at the end of Stage 1. His team executed a short pit stop, grabbed 4 fresh tires, and Wallace used superior track position to pass 22 cars on pit road, vaulting himself all the way to the front of the field. It was a brilliant piece of racecraft, and the brutal irony is that the very move that placed him in the lead also placed him directly at the center of everything that came next. Here is exactly how the crash developed. Wallace is leading in the middle lane. Ross Chastain is directly behind him with Blaney and Logano stacked in a push chain. Chastain makes a move, shifting from the inside lane upward into the middle lane to push Wallace harder and gain momentum. The surge of compounded force hits Wallace's Toyota, the car goes loose, and it shoots toward the outside safer barrier. Cole Custer, running directly ahead of the developing chaos, reacts instantly by diving down to avoid contact. That creates a 3-wide pinch point entering Turn 3, and for every car stacked behind that pinch point, there was simply no time to react. Smoke fills the air. The track becomes a wall of wrecking cars within moments. Ryan Blaney described it from inside the cockpit, saying that everyone just got nose-to-bumper tagged, that you're trying to lift and check up, and the next thing you know, everybody is wrecking. Custer said the 23 car shot up into him, and it was all over. Larson, watching from further back in the field, said he saw them check up hard before the smoke and debris arrived at his position. The red flag came out on lap 116, the race was stopped, and when the cameras panned across Talladega, the image was staggering. Debris, crumpled sheet metal, and wrecked cars scattered across the entire racing surface. The official count reached 26 cars involved in the wreck. The full list reads like a who's who of the NASCAR Cup Series. Larson, Preece, Blaney, Wallace, Logano, Byron, Busch, Hamlin, Keselowski, Gibbs, Custer, Briscoe, Berry, Suarez, Nemechek, Jones, Gase, Ware, Fincham, McDowell, Hockavar, Zane Smith, Van Gisbergen, Cindric, Austin Dillon, and Love. 26 cars gone or effectively eliminated from competition in a single moment, with only 4 drivers surviving to continue racing: Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, Christopher Bell, and Ryan Preece. Among the casualties, some stood out more painfully than others in the context of the day. Tyler Reddick, who had announced a contract extension with 23X Racing that very morning, was running on pace for a strong finish before his day ended violently in the wreck. Joey Logano, a three-time Cup Series champion and a three-time Talladega winner, was eliminated before the race had even reached its final third. And Larson, the two-time defending champion, had absolutely nowhere to go when the chaos arrived at his front bumper. For historical context, the 2024 Yellowwood 500 at Talladega holds the all-time record with 28 cars involved in a single wreck. This crash reached 26. Talladega is trending in a deeply concerning direction. The post-race debate focused almost entirely on a single question. Whose fault was this? Three distinct arguments emerged immediately from the garage area. The first argument pointed at Bubba Wallace. His car had been showing instability during stage one while being pushed through the pack, and his own team radio after the crash pointed directly at Chastain. However, Wallace himself stepped forward publicly and took responsibility, saying his team needed to figure out how to be pushed more effectively and that he accepted accountability for what happened. The second argument placed the blame on Chastain for pushing too hard. With 4 to 5 rows of cars stacked behind him, the compounded force of that push train was enormous, and critics argued that Chastain's upward move carried more force than Wallace's car could handle at that precise moment. The counter to that argument is straightforward. Chastain was one of the 4 survivors, he led laps after the restart, and he was racing hard rather than recklessly. The third argument, and the most structurally significant one, is that the car itself is the fundamental problem. This is where Logano's post-crash comments cut the deepest. He put it bluntly, saying that drivers are being asked to either save fuel or crash, and that is genuinely what it feels like right now. He went further, naming the next-gen car's round bumpers as a direct contributor to the instability, arguing that until NASCAR addresses the round bumpers and the aerodynamic instability, these kinds of crashes will keep happening. Blay offered the most measured take of anyone in the garage, pointing out that there is no individual blame to assign here because one driver eventually gets turned with a car as inherently unstable as the next-gen machine. No single driver caused this. The car's design amplifies every small error into a catastrophic chain event, and that is the most honest conclusion available. After the red flag period, the race resumed, and Talladega was not finished delivering chaos. Ty Gibbs, who had survived the big wreck, blew a tire almost immediately after the restart and hit the wall hard, collecting McDowell in the process. Connor Zilisch earned a penalty for moving his car during the red flag period. The field was thoroughly gutted. What remained was a thin group of survivors attempting to piece together something resembling a race. With 7 laps remaining, Eric Jones spun and brought out another caution, leaving just 3 laps of green flag racing to settle the winner. It came down to Carson Hocevar on the low line and Chris Buescher on the high line, racing door-to-door at full speed. Hocevar won, taking his first career NASCAR Cup Series victory at Talladega. The same driver who had been caught up in the big wreck made repairs during the red flag and came all the way back to win the race. It was a remarkable story. Meanwhile, Kyle Busch's team repaired the number 8 car from significant wreck damage all the way back to a 10th place finish, one of the more impressive recovery drives of the entire season. The bigger question that Logano's words put on the table is one that will not go away quietly. The current stage format encourages fuel conservation during stage 1, then pushes every team to go flat out during stage 2, and that mismatch in speeds inside a pack of 40 cars is dangerous by design rather than by accident. The next-gen cars' round bumpers and aerodynamic instability mean that one misplaced push sends an entire field into the barrier before anyone can react. And the pattern is disturbingly consistent. 2024 saw 28 cars wrecked at Talladega, and 2026 saw 26. These are not random flukes or isolated incidents. They are symptoms of a system under serious structural stress. And the fix, whether it involves redesigning the nose of the car, restructuring the stage format, restricting the pushing game, or some combination of all of these, is a conversation that NASCAR needs to have with urgency and genuine intent. Lap 115, 4 survivors, 26 casualties, and Carson Hocevar is holding a Talladega trophy. Bubba Wallace had the last word heading out of the garage that evening, saying simply that the team would move on to Texas and have some fun. The race had no clean villain, and that is exactly what makes it worth examining honestly and debating seriously.